products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready for Insights to Incite? Ready or not, it's showtime. Now get ready to listen in and watch right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join us and together we will escape the mundane. Insights to Incite, here is your host, Brandon Lawson.
It has been said that we make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill. Friends, this is Brandon Lawson coming to you from my home in Ohio. And today I want to speak with you about giving. I mean, as we think of this, that this standpoint of the perspective I want to come to you on is more a matter of giving of ourselves, which requires us getting outside of ourselves. I want to speak to you about this. I believe this is a matter that truly matters. It matters to me, perhaps to you, and to many people. In fact, to me, it is one of the most enjoyable aspects of living. It's very dear to my heart. I really enjoy getting outside of myself and blessing others. And as we consider that, what does it look like when we think of giving of ourselves and getting outside of ourselves? One thing we can see in that for certain is servanthood, serving others, not self. And in light of that, it's pretty common anymore in the business world, as well as maybe in church. You might hear in sermons or Bible lessons about, serving, being out there in acts of service and specifically serving others. And in fact, you may have even heard of the motto or seen it called service above self. And that is a good motto, a good slogan to live by. And so that's a good start. Yet, how often do we see this fleshed out before our eyes? We may hear about it a lot, but how often do we see it? Or how often are we? How often am I or you personally? How often do we exemplify this principle? Well, that's part of what I want to speak to you today. I want to talk about this and talk about different roadblocks or different things that maybe don't call them roadblocks, but reasons why we tend to default to a selfish nature and not to serving others and thinking of others, as well as what we can do about it. And, you and I both know, we've read of, we've heard of accounts where, there was someone's life was changed, perhaps literally transformed by someone else who stepped outside of themselves and decided to be that generous giver, that sacrificial servant. And in knowing this, and since we know this, that we can have a life-changing impact and the joy it actually brings us. I don't think any of us are naive to how the joy, the fulfillment we get when we are that person. And in knowing this, why is it that we as a human race, we as a society of people are predominantly selfish? I mean, any thoughts? Want to chime in? Fine. on that, but I have some, thoughts as to why we've come to this. Why is it we are this way? Can you remember when you were a child? Like your toddler years? Most of us who are adults probably cannot. Yet, we probably can remember when someone, much younger than us, who, is very dear to our heart. It could be your own daughter, your own son, perhaps a grandson, granddaughter. But you think back to another person, they're a little child, a toddler. That precious moment when they said their first word, how you're so excited. They said, Mama, Dada. Such a precious moment in that time. And then shortly thereafter, we start to try to teach them more because we see they can speak. They're pronouncing things, enunciating words. And with that said, one of the first things we teach is perhaps how to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, on and on. And about that same time, we may be teaching them how to say the alphabet, how to say their ABCs. Kids today are brilliant. I mean, there's some kids saying their ABCs at 3.5 years old. And as we think of that, and going back to how we, how have we come to be such a selfish race of people? Well, there are 3 reasons that I believe, that I've seen myself, that I, believe are reasons we have grown to be such. These 3 reasons I like to call the ABCs of self-centeredness. Yes. And the first one is A, awareness, B, behavior, and C, culture. And we're going to dive into these and expound more on, how each of these play a role in bringing us to who we are today, and how we are. But first, we're going to step away for our first break. We'll be right back.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or calling him at 513-520-7597. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
So, today, again, we're talking about giving and giving of ourselves and getting outside of ourselves. And it was Albert Einstein who once quipped, "A person first starts to live when he can live outside himself." And as you think of that quote, think of those who are full of life. Those who enjoy life, who seem to really be living. Are they consumed with their self? No. They may have a lot of things. They may have a lot of joy and a lot of things, but they get there generally by being a servant. That's how you tend to climb the ladder. You can't just keep doing things for you, and all about me. We tend to live in a world of me, myself, and I. But the ones who stand out, the ones who set themselves apart. You think that word stand out. If you flip those two words, you got outstand. Those who are outstanding are the ones who get outside themselves, who make a difference in lives. I mean, you and I, as I said, we've read or heard of stories of lives being changed, even transformed by such, and perhaps you've even experienced this. I mean, those of us who have experienced this can attest firsthand, as to the strength and the power of one's conduct and spirit, along with that spirit and the power, the impact it yields. So again, it's a shame that we tend to be consumed with ourselves. And as I said, we want to talk about why that is. And we mentioned the ABCs. The A, as said, is awareness. And what happens as we come out of our little kid years, as we start to get older and we're, into elementary school and on, suddenly you're a teenager, now we're an adult. Well, as we move along in the years, our awareness of what goes on around us expands. We're not a little child whose brain has not totally developed. We are open, so we take in more, we absorb more. And in doing so, we notice all the evil, or maybe not all of it, but we see a lot of it. We're aware. We're aware of the evil, the injustice, how, such and such, someone attacked them or did whatever, something that should never have been done. And, being aware of this, we tend to be more on guard. I mean, fear sets in. We heard about someone, who was attacked out of the blue, out of nowhere. This person attacked. And so now if we go out, we want to make sure it's not too dark out, or if we're with someone, or, we've got protection, because, if we're not too loose with our stuff, we want to make sure it's not stolen. We're not a victim, because when fear sets in, it has this way of generating this protective mode, and we're protecting ourselves. And as we do so, our focus is on self, not on others. Yeah, we might be worried about others, but that instance of noticing others is not in the form of service and giving of yourself. But we tend to be very guarded. And in some respects, that is not a bad thing. I mean, Proverbs 4:23 even tells us, it says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of your life. For to the ancient Jews, the heart was the core of a person's being. That's where everything flowed from. It's where they said the mind, the intellect, and the emotions, the spirit all intersected. Everything flowed out of the heart. And so that's why, above all else, guard it. And yes, so we are in that respect. But if we live a life of fear, I mean, not only is that going to cause us to not be a servant, it's no fun. And but fear has its way of setting in, and then we go into protective mode. And our focus is on me. So that's how the awareness tends to cause us to become more consumed with self. And then B is behavior. As we think about behavior, I'm thinking of, could be your own behavior, but also the behavior of the treatment toward you. And I'm thinking specifically of the times when you've been there, I've been there. We get evil returned for our good. I mean, that's a sad part of life. I mean, it seems like, I don't know anyone, who's of age who has not experienced that at some point. And yet it tends to hurt more, being that this is what we got for doing good. I mean, if we did something wrong and we're being punished, it might hurt, and it probably should. But when we didn't even do anything to deserve such, treatment, that tends to bother us more or hurt more than we're getting what we deserved. And as a result, we are generally more hesitant. We're not as likely to step out and be that giver, to be that one who helps. Here we remember that when we did that before, we got burned. Well, no one likes to be burned, whether it's that kind of situation or a fire. If a fire burns you, generally it leaves a mark on your skin, your body. They say it's a scar, something that doesn't just go away on its own and probably never will. The same goes with, when we're treated, especially if it's very, very rude, mean, heinous, or if it comes from someone who is the last person you thought would do it. It can leave emotional scars, indelible marks on our soul. Well, we don't want that. None of us do. And so again, we're less likely to step out, and we're more apt to retreat within the self. So there you have it. That's behavior. Then the C is culture. Friends, I don't know where you're listening at, or where you're watching in from, where you're at in, across the globe, but I will say, our culture in the U.S., and probably expands well beyond us, but in Western civilization, maybe more so than the Middle East or such. But our culture over here, if you are one that, enjoys sacrificing yourself to help another, to help lift or love another person, especially if this is not an exception, but this is the norm. This is you. It's who you are. If you're like that, our culture says you're strange or you're outright weird. You just, who is like that person? And that while there are some that actually notice and will esteem you for such, much of society, they think you're a weirdo because there's hardly anybody like you. Or worse yet, they'll classify you as a fraud. You don't really love her. She doesn't love him. Oh, this is an act. What are they really after? What's their hidden agenda, the ulterior motive behind it? They say, when maybe they come to realize that you're not a facade eventually. You're not a fraud. You're not putting up a facade and act, a front to anyone. Well, they say, I'm sorry, I just, this just isn't, typical of people, or they might even say it's not normal. So they say you're abnormal because you're actually good. You're exceptional. You're an exception to what the norm is, and actually for the better. Yet you're abnormal according to them. And so, again, we're getting all this, whether we're getting framed, having our character twisted, or as I might even say with a stronger language, but it's, it puts in perspective now how much I dislike this kind of treatment, especially for doing good. But I say, instead of twisting, I often will say they molest your character, because in effect, that's what they're doing. They're molesting your character and maligning you for being good. And that's how our culture is. Sadly, it's true. They are that type. That's what we live amongst. So as a result, we may think twice about stepping up to be that generous giver, to be that sacrificial servant, to be that one that in humble likeness and humble faith, and one who's gentle in nature and who truly cares. So step out to help someone they don't even know. You're more apt to get praise if you help an animal in our world, in our society, than you are if you help a person. If you inflict harm on an animal, you'll be dragged to the courts and framed as the dog of dogs, except in a bad way. Not because you are an animal, because if you're an animal, you'd be loved to death. But if you help a person, who knows if anybody even cares? Even, they might hear about it and say, so, what's that mean to me? You help an animal, you're a hero. Sadly, people put animals above humans. We see it all the time. And to those of you who are animal lovers, I'm sorry if that steps on your toes, but I'm not here to say be cruel to animals, but to treat them as they're equal to humans. They're not. Why did God give humans the give them the rule that tell them to rule over the livestock of the air, the birds of the air, the livestock of the field, the fish, the creatures of the sea? It wasn't animals to rule over humans. So there we have it. Being our culture will often label you as a weirdo, a strange freak, or maybe even a con who's putting up an act. We're more apt to say, maybe I shouldn't. I'm just going to be framed and made out to be, this heinous filth. So we don't do it nearly as much. And so for these three reasons, we tend to be more focused on us. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want to be twisted and framed as some dirty filth. That's normal for us not to want that. And yet, that's what happens. And that's why we have a whole slew of people who are self-centered. I would say the self-centered ones are more than a dime a dozen easily. I mean, a dime a dozen, 10 out of 12 is the equivalent of 83 1/3%, which would say that those who are not self-centered is only 16 2/3% of population. That's out of every six. And with that being said, that one out of every six, well, I say it's even less than that. It's less than, it's more than a dime a dozen who are self-centered, which means it's less that aren't. I would say it would be even perhaps less than 1 out of 20, less than 5% of population, if not even much less than that. But point is, that's what we've become. And each of these, the awareness, the behavior, the culture, one thing you can see in all three is these are something that we've been groomed to become. This is something we've learned, and over time we've been shaped and molded by such. That's the impact of our world, and even of our family, our upbringing, where we go to school, even, it's I believe that's, not solely on these about being self-centered and stuff, but this as well as many other things. I believe that's one of the reasons why homeschool is becoming more and more popular. Parents realize the kind of, cruddiness that their kids come into when they're part of a school system, when they go to school. They realize all the bad influence and how that has its way of shaping their own flesh and blood, the ones that they, gave birth to. And they don't want their kids to grow up to be, self-centered or to be involved in other dirtiness that often goes on in your schools. So now we have to ask ourselves, what can we do? What is it, that we can do? What steps can we take? What practical things that we ourselves have control over, that we can actually step out to do, to reverse this, to build a culture that is more open, not naive to the evil, not naive to what's going on around us, but that doesn't allow us to be so consumed with me, with myself, with I. Well, as we talked about the ABCs, our next three letters in the alphabet, as we know, are D, E, F. So what can we do? D, decide. Decide today. Determine within yourself that you will reverse this trend, that you will not continue to be selfish, that you will rise up out of this habitual state of self-centeredness. So, what is it that I will do? What will you do? Because we have to decide, and we have to be determined, but we also, there's a big and here. This isn't decide and determine or do. It's decide, determine, and do. What is it that you will do, and to whom? To who? So we got two parts there. What is it you would do? Be specific, and also specific about who you would do it to or who you would do it for. When we think of that, action, a work, a deed as such, as we think of the term deed, a deed is like a legal contract, a legal document, that comes into play in the transference of property. It shows that this is the former owner is parting ways and giving it to the new owner. It gives that new owner, legal permission, and it shows that they are indeed the owner, so that they didn't try to steal this. Now that their title is on this property, they own it, and there's the deed showing the transfer of such. And while that deed is, something that attests to this statement of the new owner claiming it's theirs, saying it's true, it approves of it. It shows that this is not theory or not just his word, it is fact. In the same way, how do we show we've changed? How is it real to people? It's by what we do, what we consistently do. In fact, how we are. That shows who we are. And so, what is it that we will do, and for whom? Who will be the recipient? And what action? What is it that act of service that will bless him, bless her, that will bless them? Then E. E is our environment. You could even say the soil. If you think of a seed that's planted, you can put good seed in some soil that has rocks in it. Put some that has thorns and thistles. Then you put some in just good soil, and you'll have three different results of what will rise up out of it. Yeah. And in fact, Jesus even spoke of this. You can find it in multiple places in the Gospels. Find it in Matthew 13, and I believe it's also in Mark 6. And if you would like, you can turn with me there. Share that with you. I'm going to go from Matthew 13's account. You want to go there with me? The parable of the sower. On the same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the sea, and great multitudes were gathered together to him, so that he got into a boat and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. Then he spoke many things in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went out to sow. As he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And within that, we see, this seed. I mean, even today, if you took this seed and put it in those, rocky soil, thorns and thistles in soil, and then good soil, and you would find that the rocky soil or the thorns and thistles, it may grow some, but not much. It can't continue to grow, cannot flourish. Where the good seed, or the seed in the good soil, would flourish, grow and spring into something major. Scientists could do search and they'd find research and find that all three cases the seed was good, but it was not all of it was in good soil, only the one. And our environment, is made up of what I say is, what forms it is our pipe, the pipeline, which it all flows through. And that pipe, I like to say, is the people we interact with, that we associate with, their influence, what involvement we have with them and the things we do. And then we have the I, and that's the intake. What do we take in? What do we watch? How much do you spend time looking at the TV, which doesn't have all that much good on it? And, what do you listen to on your way to work, on your way home from work? Are you listening to talk shows that have, politics where they're bashing one another? Do you listen to uplifting, inspiring music, inspiring messages? Do you choose what you listen to by putting the CD in, and then is it good stuff? What is it that we absorb, that we take in? That because what we take in, what we allow ourselves to absorb, it has a way of shaping us as well. The impact it has will yield its fruit, will show. Does our seed grow into a good crop that flourishes? Are we constantly battling, choking, fighting for our lives? Maybe not literally, but we have a hard time getting beyond this one level. We can't continue to rise more and more, And then the third letter is P, which I call our pot or our pan. This is where those things that come into us, that the intake comes in, and those things that we allow to simmer and bake within our minds. Those things we dwell on, that we constantly think about, that our mind constantly goes to, and their effect on us. And then the last letter, E, is our experiences of what we go through, what's happened to us. Some of it's what we've done, but also what's happened to us, has its way of all three of these have all four of these, the people, the intake, the pot and the pan of stuff that simmers and bakes in us, as well as the experiences we go through and what we've experienced come to us, have our way of shaping the environment we walk into. Yes, I mean, these four things of yesterday have helped produce the environment we're in today. And what we do with these four things today will shape the environment we come into tomorrow and down the road. But our experiences have their own way of causing us to, to be good or bad, to walk into a better life or a worse life. This environment that we create also plays a part in, are we going to get outside of ourselves? Are we going to be consumed with ourselves? Are we going to be those who step out and stand out, be part of the outstanding, or be of the norm? You can't continue to be like everyone else and stand out. I mean, that phrase "stand out" is contrary to being like everyone else. It's like a star that shines in the sky. You don't see stars shining in the sky when it's daylight because it doesn't stand out. The whole sky is light. But when it's dark and those stars sparkle, they shine, they stand out. You can't be like everyone else and stand out. So we need to do something about this, decide, determine, and do. And then help to work and create that environment that you will come into, that you'll bring your loved ones into, your friends, those you lead into. Then F is friends. And as our culture has a way of shaping us, and that we can create another culture through our friends, the people we gather, we gather around us, the ones we associate with, that we we allow into our inner circle, they, will help us to build a different culture, create a new culture, a good culture. And this will enable us, it will give us that, again, amongst good soil that allows us to flourish, that's not constantly choking the life out of us. Let's surround ourselves with the people that we believe in. And within this, maybe some people you need to say goodbye to. Well, Brandon, what if I hurt their feelings? You may very well hurt their feelings. And that's something they'll have to live with. That's the consequence of being one who chokes the life out of you. You have to respectfully tell them, I'm sorry, but I'm going my own way. And maybe you don't even verbally say it. You communicate it by giving them less and less of your attention. And sooner or later, they'll probably get the idea. You don't want to be bothered. And when they try to suck you back in, don't go for it. And perhaps over time, once you have departed and you no longer have any attachment to them, you're detached, and you start flourishing and going up, perhaps over time, you have an opportunity to reach out and influence them because they'll desire what you have. They'll be reaching out to you and, please tell me. I don't want to live the life that I've lived. I see how your life is so much better. And you'll have that opportunity to influence them, to speak into their heart, to lead them, to impact their lives. But at first, it's going to take you hurting their feelings. And think about that. Which would you rather? You don't hurt their feelings, and then, you are stuck in mediocrity and you hardly manage to do much of anything. You don't have any fulfillment, or if you have any, it's very little. And that came because you don't want to hurt their feelings, or you stepped away and you hurt their feelings. You grew to become something better. And then maybe, it's not a given, but maybe they'll want to know now and they'll be ready to receive what you want to share. And you can impact them, then you can bring them up there with you. You can lead them. Which would you choose? The friends, the people we should classify as our friends and the ones that are such, it doesn't mean that they're never down, but we don't want to be around perpetual naysayers, doubters, those who tell us it will never work. Those who laugh at us when we tell us our dreams. That's not the kind of people you want to, be around, that you want to, associate with. You don't want to be soaking up and absorbing the vibes of naysayers, of negativity. You want people who will, help you, who will encourage you and support you. You want people who inspire you and who would challenge you. You may be lacking in faith that you can do something, that you could ever rise to somewhere. You need those who say, yes, you can, and I'll show you. I'll help you. I won't let you stay there. I care too much about you to leave you where you are. I'm going to help lift you to take you where I know you can go. We need friends who would do that for us, and friends that will be recipients of us in doing that for them. There's another account in the scripture of a situation where, this individual wouldn't let this person stay in the state they were in. If we turn to the book of Acts, and going to be looking in Acts chapter 4. Let's see here. Or actually, let's look here. I think this is Acts chapter 3. And it says, now Peter and John went up together to the temple at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour, and a certain man lame from his mother's womb, that is since birth, was carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, to ask alms from those who entered the temple, who seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, asked for alms, and fixing his eyes on him with John, Peter said, Look at us." So he gave them his attention, expecting to receive something from them. Then Peter said, "Silver and gold I do not have, but what I do have I give you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk." And he took him by the right hand and lifted him up, and immediately his feet and ankle bones received strength. Well, you can almost imagine this guy's been lame since birth. I mean, you can see this where, if someone comes along and tells you, "Rise up, get up and walk," you're looking and saying, "What? How am I to walk? I'm lame. I've never walked once in my life. I mean, what are you talking about? Don't you get it?" But I love how Peter, he didn't say, "Well, I tried, you don't want to listen, you don't want to walk. That's on you." And he didn't just walk away. Peter reached out his hand and lifted him up. The guy got up and walked, and his ankles, his legs, the bones were healed. He was strengthened, began walking, and then goes on. And, people were floored by it, of course. But the point here is, Peter didn't just, say, "Well, you don't want to do it, then that's on you," and go his merry way. He said, "I won't leave you in that state." He reached out, he lifted him up. We need people who will challenge us and who will be there to say, "Yeah, I know you can do this, Brandon. I know, Ashley. You can do this. You may not believe it, but I know you can. And I'm going to help you get there. I'm going to show you you can. Stephen, I've seen what you've done times past. I know what you're capable of." We need those people. We need to be that person to those people. Well, those are the friends that we want to surround ourselves with. Those are the people we want to be. And in doing so, we can create a culture that helps us to step outside of ourselves, helps us to give more of ourselves, helps us to be that person who is not consumed with self, that person who makes a difference. We can be one who just by our very nature of who we've become, will gladly give to others. And sometimes, giving to others, if you're concerned about the safety of what's going to be made of you or such, just do it anonymously. That's also some of the most powerful ways to do such. Because, for one, you're not doing it, not announcing it to anyone. No one really knows. And just, you blessed someone. And maybe you don't even know who all it is you have blessed in doing so. But I guarantee you it will, feel great. You'll have great fulfillment, great joy when you do so. And plus you might find it even more meaningful that you laid low. Your name wasn't even out there. You weren't recognized, and yet you see the difference you made. Especially when you can see the fruit of the efforts, the lives you've personally impacted. And we're about to conclude today's show. So what is it that you will do? And who is it that you would do this for, that you will bless? I'm going to share a brief poem real quick. And this poem was written by Alan William Dromgoole. I'm sorry, I think it's William Allen Dromgoole. But he wrote a poem called The Bridge Builder. This guy builds this bridge, but it's also an act of service, of giving with no strings attached. The bridge builder goes, "An old man going a lone highway came at the evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The rolling stream had no fears for him. He turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. 'Old man,' said a fellow traveler near, 'you are wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build you this bridge at even tide?' The builder lifted his old gray head. 'Good friend, in the path I have come,' he said, 'there followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. The chasm that was naught to me, to the fair-headed youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I am building this bridge for him. Will you build a bridge for another to help them to get from where they are to where they want to be or where they could be? Can you see the greatness, the potential in others and step out of yourself and be that one that leads them to their destiny, that helps them fulfill their calling? Well, I believe you can. I believe all of us can. I can as well. The real question is, will we be that person? Let's do this. Let's decide today. Let's determine within ourselves that we will rise up to be people who get outside of ourselves, who bless others. Let's create an environment for ourselves and those around us that we can walk into a better environment, one that is blessings to others and not all about self. Let's build a new culture with friends who help us, who we can help to lift up one another, to be more, to be great, to influence each other and influence society. Let it spill over and outward. Let's do this, friends. Thank you for joining me, and we're here every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern, and we hope to see you again next week. Thank you.
Wow, what an insightful show. Thanks for listening in and watching today. If you missed any part of today's show or any other episode, check it out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now take today's insight and utilize it. Incite yourself to action and to excellence in the week ahead, and join us again next Thursday and every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time for another insightful session with Brandon Lawson as he speaks to us and shares some more insights to incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV.